You will regret this shame you brought upon me today. Evelyn said it through tears as her husband dropped her bags at the gate and turned his back while neighbors watched. He thought those words were emotional noise. He had no idea that the woman walking away with nothing was about to become the quiet beginning of his complete collapse. Viewers, let me ask you this. Have you ever mistaken cruelty for power? Because what happens next will make you rethink everything you believe about marriage, pride, and consequences. And if you love powerful and inspiring stories, kindly subscribe to the channel because the stories shared here might change the way you see life forever. In tears, his wife whispered, "You will regret this shame you brought upon me today." Tell me, if you were standing there, watching a marriage collapse in public, would you have stopped him, or would you have looked away? That question hangs in the air for a reason, because what you are about to hear is not just a marriage story, it is a lesson about pride, loyalty, ambition, and the quiet cost of disrespect. Stay with me, because the truth behind that sentence will not reveal itself until the very end. The compound on Adeniyi Street had seen many arguments, but never this. It was a busy Lagos afternoon, traffic humming beyond the gate, generators coughing into life, hawkers shouting prices with tired confidence. Inside that compound, a man named Adrian Cross stood barefoot on interlocked stones, his phone clenched in his hand, his jaw tight with a decision he had rehearsed for weeks. Clothes lay scattered near the gate. A suitcase leaned sideways, half open, as if it too was shocked by where it had been dragged. Neighbors slowed their steps. Someone across the fence stopped washing a car. Respectable silence settled, the kind Lagos people use when something private becomes painfully public. Across from Adrian stood his wife, Evelyn Cross. She did not scream. She did not curse. Her hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the effort of holding herself together. Her eyes searched his face, hoping to find the man she married, the man who once begged her to believe in his dreams. 10 years earlier, Evelyn had followed Adrian through the crowded lanes of Computer Village, balancing account books while he negotiated prices with suppliers. He was ambitious then, hungry but unsure. Delays at the port nearly ruined him more than once. Exchange rates shifted like bad weather. Containers arrived late. Payments vanished into bureaucracy. During those nights, when sleep refused to come, Evelyn sat beside him, calculating losses, making calls, pushing him to stand again. They were not rich, but their home was peaceful. Respect lived there. "Please," Evelyn said quietly, "if you want me to leave, I will. Just don't do this outside. Don't strip me of dignity." Adrian didn't respond. His mind was elsewhere, filled with images of boardrooms, high-end restaurants, and conversations where people called him successful. Success had changed his tone, his friends, his patience, and somewhere along that road, a woman named Lillian entered his life. Lillian admired power. She spoke the language of progress, comfort, and social status. She laughed at the idea of sacrifice and told Adrian that growth required shedding old skins. Slowly, carefully, she planted doubts about Evelyn's place in his new world. "Look at your life now," Lillian often said. "Look at how far you've come. You need someone who fits the future." That afternoon, Adrian chose that voice. He lifted another bag and dropped it beside the rest. The sound echoed louder than it should. Evelyn closed her eyes. For a moment, the street disappeared. She remembered nights she skipped meals so payments could clear. She remembered praying alone in the bathroom so he wouldn't see her fear. She remembered believing that loyalty would always matter. When she opened her eyes, something had changed. "Adrian," she said, her voice steady now, "I won't beg you to stay married to me, but understand this. Public shame leaves marks that time does not erase." He shrugged, the kind of shrug that says the decision is final. Neighbors watched as Evelyn picked up the smaller bag. She looked around once, not to seek pity, but to fix the moment in her memory. Then she said the words that would later haunt him. "You will regret the shame you brought upon me today." She walked away. Adrian felt relief.
immediate, intoxicating relief. He told himself he had chosen progress. He told himself pain was temporary and success permanent. He was wrong. But that truth would take time. It would grow quietly, fed by trust misplaced and desire unchecked. For now, the street returned to normal. Traffic flowed. Life moved on. Only one thing remained certain. The cost of that afternoon had not yet been paid. That night, as darkness wrapped the city, Adrian sat alone in the living room that now felt larger and colder. Messages lit his phone, congratulations from partners, invitations to meetings, reminders of how respected he had become in the electronics import business. Containers had grown bigger, profits had grown faster, dealers called him reliable, banks smiled when he walked in. This was the life he believed demanded hard choices. He did not notice the silence where Evelyn's presence used to sit. He did not notice the missing ledger she always updated, or the way she used to question figures that looked too good to be true. He poured a drink and stared at the wall, already rehearsing explanations for anyone who asked. People would understand, he told himself. People always sided with success. Across town, Evelyn slept on a borrowed couch, her back to the wall, her thoughts racing. Shame tried to creep in, but she pushed it aside. She focused instead on survival, on dignity, on rebuilding quietly. She promised herself that whatever came next would be earned honestly. Somewhere between those two promises, fate began to shift, because ambition without restraint attracts the wrong kind of attention, and trust, once misplaced, becomes the most expensive mistake a person can make. Remember this moment. Remember the street. Remember the words spoken through tears. Everything that follows, every loss, every revelation, every regret will trace its roots back to this single afternoon. And when the lesson finally reveals itself, you will understand why some doors, once slammed shut in pride, never open again. This is where the real story truly begins, not ends, today. Adrian Cross did not wake up the next morning feeling a cruel man. He woke up feeling victorious. The house was quiet in a way that felt intentional, almost earned. No soft footsteps, no questions about breakfast, no reminders about pending bills or unsettled accounts. Just space, just control. He told himself this was the sound of growth. By 8 a.m., he was already on the road, driver navigating through the familiar chaos of Lagos traffic. Horns blared, buses cut lanes without apology. Billboards advertised luxurious apartments and imported cars, symbols of arrival. He watched them with satisfaction. He had arrived, too, or so he believed. At his office in Surulere, the air smelled of new paint and confidence. Glass doors, polished desks, young staff who greeted him with "Good morning, sir," voices laced with respect. He liked that word, respect. It tasted better than love these days. His business had grown fast. Electronics importation was a ruthless game, but Adrian had learned its rhythm. Phones, laptops, flat-screen televisions, and accessories, items Lagos never stopped demanding. He had started small, but now full containers bore his name. Dealers trusted him, markets waited for his shipments. He was becoming a brand. And in that world, Lillian Moore fit perfectly. She arrived at the office unannounced, her heels clicking against the floor like punctuation marks. Her confidence filled the room before she spoke. She spoke the language of progress.
She dressed like someone who belonged in conversations about expansion and influence. "You handled it," she said, smiling as she sat across from him. "I knew you would." Handled it. That was how she described yesterday. Adrian nodded. It was overdue. Lillian leaned closer. "You can't build a future while carrying people who remind you of the past." He liked how she framed it. Logical, forward-thinking, clean, no emotions cluttering the decision, no talk of sacrifice or history. That afternoon, as contracts were signed and calls were returned, Adrian felt untouchable. If a flicker of Evelyn's face crossed his mind, he buried it under numbers and projections. This was business. This was life.
Across the city, Evelyn's day looked nothing like his. She rose early, careful not to wake the woman who had offered her the couch. She washed her face in silence, staring at her reflection as if checking whether the world had marked her. It hadn't. Not yet. She dressed simply and stepped out into the street. Lagos did not pause for heartbreak. Buses were already full, traders shouted, offices opened, life demanded participation. Evelyn had one advantage Adrian had forgotten. She understood the business, too. For years she had watched suppliers, followed payment trails, corrected errors that would have cost them everything. She knew documentation, she knew discipline, and she knew trust was currency. She walked into an electronics distribution firm where she had once delivered documents on Adrian's behalf. The receptionist barely recognized her at first, but the operations manager did. "You're Adrian Cross's wife?" he said, then corrected himself awkwardly. "You were." "I was also the one who kept his books balanced," Evelyn replied calmly. "If you need someone reliable, I'm available." Something in her tone, steady, unbroken, caught his attention. "Leave your details," he said. "We'll talk." That small moment mattered more than she knew. Back at Adrian's office, another man walked in, Victor Hale. Victor had been around since the early days, long before glass desks and imported chairs. He handled foreign supplier connections and payment arrangements, quiet, efficient, and trusted. Victor respected Evelyn. He noticed her absence. "Your wife used to check these figures," Victor said casually, tapping a file. "She had an eye for inconsistencies." Adrian stiffened. "She's no longer involved." Victor nodded, but the silence lingered. Experience had taught him that businesses often fell apart not because of lack of money, but because the wrong voices were removed. Later that evening, Adrian and Lillian dined at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city. Lagos stretched beneath them, lights flickering like promises. Lillian spoke of expansion, bigger deals, faster payments, higher margins. "You're playing too small," she said. "With your reputation, you should be aiming higher." Her words ignited something dangerous: hunger. "What do you suggest?" Adrian asked. She smiled. "Opportunities come to those who trust themselves." Trust. The word landed softly, disguising its weight. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat in a dim room, phone on her lap, scrolling through old messages she hadn't deleted. Shipping delays, late-night calculations, Adrian's voice notes thanking her for standing by him. She didn't cry. She archived them instead. Some chapters were not meant to be reread, only remembered for lessons. Days turned to weeks. Adrian finalized his divorce paperwork quickly. He wanted closure, not reflection. Lillian moved closer, her influence subtle but constant. Victor remained efficient, though quieter now, observing more than speaking. Evelyn got a call. "Can you start on Monday?" the operations manager asked. "We need someone who understands systems and integrity." She accepted without celebration. Stability did not require noise. On Adrian's side, profits rose. On Evelyn's side, peace returned in small doses. Neither knew how deeply their paths were about to diverge. What Adrian didn't realize was that success, when it silences the people who question it, becomes vulnerable. What Evelyn didn't know was that dignity, once reclaimed, would soon protect her from a storm she would never see coming. Somewhere in the city, Victor made a call that would change everything. And somewhere else, a deal was being shaped, one that promised the biggest return Adrian had ever imagined. It would test loyalty, it would expose desire, and it would prove that not every opportunity is a blessing. Because the most expensive lessons often arrive wearing the face of progress. Adrian Cross had reached the stage of success where people stopped questioning him. Banks returned his calls faster. Suppliers adjusted their tone. Younger importers mentioned his name with a mix of envy and respect. In Lagos, reputation travels quicker than proof, and Adrian's reputation was rising. That was exactly when Victor Hale brought the proposal. It was a Tuesday afternoon, heat heavy in the air, the kind that made even air-conditioned offices feel strained. Adrian sat behind his desk, scanning shipment schedules, when Victor walked in carrying a slim brown folder. "I got a message from one of our Asian contacts. It's not something they usually offer," Victor said, placing the folder down carefully. Adrian looked up, interest sharpened. "Go on." Victor opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, figures highlighted in pen, timelines neatly outlined. "A supplier is clearing old stock before a factory upgrade," Victor explained. "Phones, laptops, smart televisions, same brands we already deal in, discounted heavily. But there's a condition." Adrian leaned back. "There's always a condition." "The payment has to be immediate, full amount, no installments, no delays." Adrian scanned the numbers, his breath caught, not from fear, but from excitement. The projected profit dwarfed anything he had handled before. This was not just a good deal, this was a leap. "How reliable is this supplier?" Adrian asked. Victor hesitated for a fraction of a second. "They've delivered before, smaller scale, but clean." That hesitation would have mattered once. It didn't now. That evening, Adrian mentioned the deal to Lillian over dinner. She listened closely, eyes bright, fingers resting lightly on his wrist. "This is what I've been talking about," she said. "Big players don't hesitate, they act." "It's a lot of money," Adrian replied. "I'd be tying up everything." Lillian smiled gently. "Everything you've built is meant to be used. What's the point of success if you're afraid to deploy it?" Her words echoed the voice Adrian now trusted most, his own ambition, reinforced. "What about risk?" Adrian asked. She laughed softly. "Risk is for people who doubt themselves. You've outgrown that stage."
Meanwhile, across town, Evelyn sat at her new desk, reviewing inventory reports. The distribution firm was busy, but orderly. Systems mattered here. Checks existed for a reason. Her supervisor noticed how she flagged inconsistencies without drama. "You're thorough," he said one afternoon. "That's rare." Evelyn nodded. Mistakes hide where no one looks. Back in Adrian's world, preparation for the big deal accelerated. Victor handled communications. Lillian encouraged speed. Adrian liquidated savings, redirected funds, even approached his bank for a short-term loan to complete the amount. The bank approved it without hesitation. That approval felt like validation. The night before the transfer, Adrian stood alone in his office, city lights flickering outside. He thought briefly of Evelyn, how she would have insisted on verifying documents twice, how she would have questioned timelines that seemed too perfect. He dismissed the thought. "She was cautious," he muttered. "This requires boldness." The money was sent the next morning. Hours passed. Then a day. Victor said delays were normal. Lillian reassured him. Suppliers overseas often took time to respond after large payments. By the third day, Adrian felt the first pinch of unease. Calls went unanswered longer than usual. Emails received short replies with vague explanations. Victor remained calm, but something in his calm felt rehearsed. On the fifth day, Adrian noticed something else. Lillian hadn't slept at home. She claimed a headache, said she needed space. Her messages were brief, affectionate but distant. By the seventh day, Victor's phone went straight to voicemail. Adrian drove to Victor's apartment. The landlord said he had moved out suddenly, no forwarding address, no explanation. The air shifted. Adrian returned home, heart pounding, and checked his email obsessively. Nothing. He checked transaction records again, searching for reassurance inside numbers that no longer comforted him. Then he noticed it. An email chain forwarded to Victor months earlier, one that included a personal tone, familiarity that exceeded business. A cold realization crept in. Across the city, Evelyn closed her laptop and prepared to leave work. She felt lighter these days, not happy in the careless sense, but stable, grounded. Respect had returned quietly, without applause. She did not know that at that same moment the foundation of Adrian's world was cracking. By nightfall, Adrian understood the truth he had refused to consider. Victor was gone. The supplier did not exist, and Lillian's phone was switched off. The deal that promised destiny had been a carefully dressed lie, and the bill had only just arrived. The first thing Adrian Cross lost was sleep. Not immediately. At first it came in fragments, short bursts between anxious thoughts, jolted awake by the vibration of a phone that never rang. He would stare at the ceiling, replaying conversations, numbers, smiles that now felt staged. By the second week, sleep disappeared entirely. His office, once a place of confidence, began to feel hostile. Every ring of the phone tightened his chest. Every email notification felt like a summons. Suppliers who had trusted him now wanted updates. Dealers asked about delivery dates. Markets waited. Adrian stalled. Port delays, he told some. Documentation issues, he told others. He believed he was buying time. In reality, time was closing in. The bank called. At first, the tone was polite. The loan officer asked for reassurance, timelines, proof that the shipment was en route. Adrian promised updates. He believed he could still fix this, trace Victor, find Lillian, reverse the payment somehow. But international transfers do not reverse out of sympathy. 3 weeks in, the tone changed. Formal letters arrived, meetings were requested. Words like exposure, liability, and default entered conversations that once revolved around expansion. Adrian drove to Victor's last known office address, then to an old warehouse where they had once inspected goods together. Nothing. Victor had erased himself with precision. That precision hurt more than anger. One evening, Adrian sat alone, scrolling through Lillian's old messages. Compliments, encouragement, strategic advice wrapped in affection. He noticed details he had ignored before. How often she spoke of Victor with admiration. How she insisted Victor be the one handling sensitive communications. The pieces aligned too late.
Across town, Evelyn's life moved in the opposite direction, quietly upward. Her supervisors began assigning her responsibility beyond her role. She streamlined reporting systems, reduced losses, improved supplier verification processes. When a questionable deal crossed her desk, she paused it until it was fully confirmed. "Better slow than sorry," she said simply. The words echoed a philosophy Adrian had abandoned. Back in Adrian's world, the collapse accelerated. Dealers stopped paying deposits. Some demanded refunds. Rumors spread, soft at first, then louder. In Lagos business circles, silence often means confirmation. A week later, the bank froze his accounts. That morning, Adrian stood at the ATM, card rejected again and again. People queued behind him, impatient. Someone muttered. He stepped aside, sweat forming despite the early hour. By afternoon, his office landlord called. "We need to talk about rent arrears," the man said, voice stiff. "Your grace period has expired." Grace. The word stung. Adrian returned home to find a notice pasted on the gate, property repossession pending, subject to review. The house that once symbolized arrival now felt temporary. He sat on the floor, back against the wall, trying to breathe through the weight pressing on his chest. Pride had kept him from calling anyone for help. Pride told him he could still fix this.
But pride does not negotiate with reality. 2 days later, his driver resigned. So did one staff member. Another stopped answering calls. The office grew quiet, then empty. Adrian began selling what he could, electronics from personal stock, furniture, even his car. The money barely slowed the fall. One afternoon, as rain streaked the windows, Adrian received an email. Not from Victor, not from Lillian. From a foreign address he didn't recognize. The message was short. The transaction was executed as agreed. There is no shipment. Please do not contact this address again. No apology, no explanation, just finality. Adrian stared at the screen until the words blurred. The truth settled fully now. He had been chosen, studied, manipulated. His ambition had been mapped and exploited. He remembered Evelyn's voice, calm and firm, warning him about figures that felt too perfect. "You will regret the shame you brought upon me today." The sentence returned, heavier now. Across the city, Evelyn received her first promotion. No ceremony, just a meeting, a handshake, and a new designation. Stability deepened. Respect followed consistency. She still lived modestly. She still checked figures twice. She still walked home some evenings, observing the city that had tested her and taught her. She did not know that Adrian had begun skipping meals, counting coins, avoiding former colleagues. She did not know he had started taking night walks, hiding from daylight and recognition. By the time the bank finalized foreclosure proceedings, Adrian had lost nearly everything tangible. What remained was memory and regret. And regret, when it arrives after arrogance, offers no comfort. The city moved on. New importers rose. New deals circulated. Adrian's name faded from conversations that once praised him. But the story was not over. Because humiliation is only the beginning of some lessons. The real test would come when paths crossed again, and when forgiveness was mistaken for restoration. Adrian Cross learned how quickly people forget success. The city that once greeted him with open doors now passed him by without recognition. He walked through markets where dealers used to rise from plastic chairs when he arrived. Now they argued prices with other men, younger men, men who reminded him of who he used to be. Pride had kept him standing for a while. Hunger humbled him. He moved from the house to a single rented room on the outskirts of the city. No generator, no steady water. At night, noise leaked through thin walls. Arguments, laughter, radios playing old songs. Sleep came easier now, not because his mind was calm, but because exhaustion demanded it. Some mornings, Adrian sat on the edge of his bed and stared at his hands, trying to understand how they once signed million-naira transfers without fear, how they once waved away caution like an insult. Flashbacks came uninvited. Evelyn sitting at the dining table, calculator clicking, eyes focused. "Let's verify this," she would say. "Let's wait one more day." He had called it fear. It had been wisdom. One afternoon, Adrian went to an old cafe near his former office. He ordered tea he could barely afford and sat quietly, listening to conversations around him. Two men discussed a failed deal, blaming the market, blaming luck. Adrian wanted to speak, to warn them. He stayed silent. Shame teaches restraint. Across town, Evelyn's life settled into rhythm. Her days were full, but not frantic. Her evenings were peaceful. She had moved into a small apartment close to work, plants by the window, clean lines, control restored. Colleagues respected her. Some asked for advice. She gave it freely, without bitterness. Always ask who benefits, she would say, and always keep your dignity intact. One evening, while reviewing supplier lists, she noticed a familiar company name, one Adrian had once worked with. The memory surfaced briefly, then passed. She did not dwell there anymore. Back in Adrian's world, desperation pushed him to places he once avoided. He visited old contacts, asked for short-term work, offered to consult. Some nodded politely, none followed through. His reputation was damaged, not because he failed, but because he failed loudly. Weeks later, Adrian stood outside a glass building in Victoria Island, watching people enter with purpose. He had heard through a distant connection that Evelyn worked there now. The thought of seeing her terrified him, but hunger had stripped fear of its power. He waited. When she emerged, phone pressed to her ear, posture steady, Adrian almost didn't recognize her, not because she had changed dramatically, but because confidence had returned to her body in a way he erased before. She ended the call and looked up. Their eyes met. Time stretched. For a second, the city disappeared. There was only the memory of shared years, of promises spoken in small rooms during uncertain nights.
Evelyn, Adrian said softly. She studied him without surprise, as if she had known this moment would come eventually. Adrian, she replied. Her voice held no edge, no warmth, just acknowledgement. They stood there, two versions of the past facing each other. I'm sorry, he said. The words felt thin, insufficient. I didn't understand what I had. Evelyn nodded once. Understanding often comes after damage. He swallowed. I lost everything. She did not respond immediately. She watched people pass, watched life continue. I heard, she said finally, not unkindly, not triumphantly. I need help, Adrian admitted. The confession broke something in him. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. Evelyn turned fully toward him now. You didn't just trust the wrong people. You silenced the right one. The truth settled between them. I forgive you, she added, and he felt relief rise until she continued. But forgiveness does not mean returning to where I was broken. The words landed with precision. Adrian nodded slowly. He had expected this, yet hoped against it. Take care of yourself and learn. She walked away. Adrian remained there long after she disappeared into the building. Forgiveness had been granted. Restoration had not. That night, Adrian lay awake, replaying the meeting, not with anger, but with clarity. Evelyn had survived with dignity. He had collapsed under excess. The lesson was no longer theoretical. Trust is earned. Loyalty is priceless. Pride costs more than money. But the story was not finished. Because somewhere beyond the city's noise, Victor and Lillian were living freely, untouched by consequences. And fate had a way of balancing scales, sometimes quietly, sometimes without mercy. The final chapters were approaching. Adrian Cross stopped running from memory after he met Evelyn. Something about her calm refusal unsettled him more than anger ever could. He had expected blame, tears, perhaps even satisfaction at his fall. What he received instead was distance, and distance forces reflection. He took a job loading goods at a small warehouse near Apapa. The work was physical, repetitive, humbling. Sweat replaced spreadsheets, bruises replaced meetings, but it kept him fed and it kept his mind occupied. One afternoon, while unloading cartons, he overheard two men talking. They say the woman moved abroad with the money. No, I heard the man got arrested in Ghana. The names caught his attention. Victor, Lillian. Adrian froze, heart pounding. That night he couldn't sleep. He searched forums, business chats, old networks he had avoided.
Information came slowly, fragmented, but it came. Victor had resurfaced under a different name in another country. A deal had gone wrong. Someone else had been scammed. Authorities were involved now. Lillian's name appeared in whispers, luxury apartments, sudden moves, connections that dissolved when questions were asked. The world they had built on deception was cracking. Across town, Evelyn received an email from a compliance unit within her company. They were investigating a past fraud involving international suppliers. Her experience made her a valuable voice. She reviewed files carefully. Patterns emerged, payment routes, shell contacts, mirrored documentation. Her stomach tightened. She recognized the structure. "This looks familiar," she told her supervisor. "I've seen this method before." The investigation deepened.
Meanwhile, Adrian was summoned by a former associate who had heard rumors of the unfolding case. "They might call you," the man warned. "You should be prepared." Prepared? For once, Adrian didn't resist. He gathered records he had kept, emails, transaction receipts, timelines. He did not hide. He did not exaggerate. He told the truth as plainly as he could. When authorities contacted him, he cooperated fully. Across the table, he spoke without pride. "I was careless," he said. "I trusted ambition over verification." The investigators listened. They wrote notes. They moved on. Evelyn was later asked to review technical details. She did so professionally, detached from emotion. The past had taught her boundaries. Weeks passed. One evening, Evelyn received a call. "They've made arrests," her supervisor said. "Your input helped close the loop." Evelyn sat quietly after the call ended. She felt no joy, only closure. Adrian heard the news days later. Victor had been detained. Lillian was under investigation. Their freedom, once purchased with his trust, had run out. The knowledge brought no satisfaction, only a sense of finality. Months later, Adrian left the warehouse job and found steadier work in logistics, smaller scale, lower stakes, honest systems. He listened more. He spoke less. Sometimes, late at night, he replayed the moment on Arigny Street, the bags by the gate, the watching neighbors, the sentence spoken through tears. "You will regret the shame you brought upon me today." She had been right, not because she wished harm on him, but because shame teaches lessons pride never will. Evelyn moved forward too. New responsibilities, new respect, peace she protected fiercely. They did not speak again. They did not need to. The city continued its rhythm. Deals were made. Trust was tested. People rose and fell. But one lesson remained, carved deep by experience. Success built without loyalty collapses. Forgiveness heals, but it does not rebuild what pride destroyed. Adrian Cross did not rise again. That was the truth no one told stories about. There was no dramatic comeback, no sudden opportunity that restored his name, no final speech where life rewarded his lessons. Lagos did not pause to applaud personal growth. The city only respected results, and Adrian no longer had any. After Victor's arrest and the investigation surrounding Lillian, Adrian expected something inside him to change. Relief, closure, even hope. None came. The knowledge that the people who ruined him were facing consequences did not lift him. It only confirmed how final his own losses were. He continued working in logistics, but the job was temporary. When the contract ended, it wasn't renewed. The company needed people with clean reputations, stable networks, and references that inspired confidence. Adrian had none of those anymore. One failure follows another quietly. He tried starting small, buying and reselling used electronics.
Customers questioned him. Suppliers demanded cash up front. Margins were thin. Trust was gone. In business, once people smell collapse, they step back instinctively. Adrian's name still carried whispers. That one? He used to be big. Careless man. No one said it to his face. They didn't need to. Meanwhile, Evelyn's life expanded without noise. She became a senior operations lead at her firm. Her recommendations shaped policy. Younger staff sought her mentorship. When she spoke, people listened, not because of her past, but because of her consistency. She never used Adrian's story as a warning publicly. She didn't need to. Her life itself was evidence that dignity compounds over time. Back in Adrian's world, isolation deepened. Friends stopped calling. Invitations dried up. Even family members avoided discussions about business with him. He became careful with conversations, knowing that one careless admission could reinforce what people already believed, that he could not be trusted.
Late one evening, Adrian stood outside a bar, watching men laugh loudly, celebrating deals. He recognized one of them, a dealer he once supplied regularly. The man didn't see him. Adrian didn't approach. He turned away instead, something heavy settling in his chest. Not regret anymore. Regret had passed. This was permanence. Some mistakes don't teach lessons that save you. They teach lessons that warn others. Adrian rented smaller rooms as money dwindled. He sold what little remained. The city became harder, less forgiving. He blended into crowds, another man with unfulfilled potential and unfinished explanations. No one came to rescue him. No one needed to. Across town, Evelyn hosted a small dinner in her apartment. Colleagues, laughter, warmth. Her life was not extravagant, but it was whole. She slept peacefully. She woke without fear. Adrian slept lightly, counting days, not dreams. The contrast was quiet, but absolute. And that was the lesson life delivered without apology. Some bridges once burned in public pride are never rebuilt. Some apologies arrive too late to matter. And some people are not meant to rise again, not because they weren't warned, but because they ignored the warning when it mattered most. The city kept moving. So did Evelyn. Adrian stayed behind. Evelyn did not plan to fall in love again. After everything she had endured, love was no longer something she chased. She focused on structure, peace, and clarity. Her life worked because it was predictable. Work ended at a certain time. Silence at home felt safe. No raised voices, no sudden disappointments, no public shame. Love, she believed, belonged to another season. Then Michael Turner walked into that season without permission. He joined the firm as a senior compliance consultant, quiet, observant, deliberate. He spoke less than most men in meetings, but when he did, people leaned in. His confidence did not announce itself. It existed naturally, without performance. Evelyn noticed him the first day, not because of attraction, but because of respect. During a meeting, a proposal was rushed forward by executives eager for profit. Michael flipped through the documents slowly, then paused. "This needs more verification," he said. "Speed is not the same as progress." The room fell quiet. Evelyn felt something stir. Not excitement, recognition. After the meeting, she approached him. "I agree," she said. "Some details don't add up." Michael smiled slightly. "Then we should look at them properly." That was how it started, not with charm, but alignment. They worked together closely over the following weeks, late evenings reviewing reports, careful discussions about ethics, systems, and responsibility. Michael never crossed boundaries,
never lingered too close, never spoke out of turn. That restraint mattered. One evening, as they packed up to leave, Michael asked, "Can I walk you to your car?" Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. They talked about neutral things at first: traffic, work stress, the city's pace. Then Michael asked a question he didn't rush. "You seem very grounded. Was it always like that?" Evelyn considered him. There was curiosity in his eyes, not intrusion. "No," she replied, honestly. "I learned." He didn't press. That night, Evelyn realized something unsettling. She felt safe. Not excited in a reckless way, not distracted. Safe. Weeks passed. Coffee breaks turned into lunch, lunch into conversations beyond work. Michael spoke of his past without drama, his own failed relationship, lessons learned, values refined. He never asked Evelyn to explain herself fully. He allowed her to reveal what she chose, when she chose. When she finally told him about Adrian, about the public humiliation, about rebuilding from nothing, Michael listened without interruption. When he finished, he said only this: "You deserved better, and you still do." No advice, no judgment, just truth. That sentence stayed with her. Their relationship grew steadily, without rush. Michael never tried to overshadow her success. He celebrated it. He respected her boundaries. He consulted her, not controlled her. Evelyn noticed the difference in small things. He kept his word.
He asked before deciding. He never raised his voice. Love, she realized, did not have to be loud to be powerful. Across the city, Adrian existed on the margins of that same Lagos, unaware, irrelevant. His life moved in tight circles now: work, sleep, survival. The world that once revolved around him no longer noticed his absence. He did not cross Evelyn's mind anymore. Months later, Michael invited Evelyn to dinner, not a flashy restaurant, but a quiet place overlooking the city. As they ate, he reached across the table, steady and sure. "I'm not here to waste your time," he said. "I'm here because I see a future with you, but I want to know, are you open to that?" Evelyn felt emotion rise, unexpected and strong. Not fear, not doubt. Readiness. "Yes," she said, "I am." Their engagement was simple. No spectacle, no noise, just intention. When they married, it was the same. A small ceremony, close friends, family. Joy that did not need to announce itself loudly. Evelyn wore white not as a symbol of innocence, but of renewal. Michael stood beside her, not ahead, not behind. As they exchanged vows, Evelyn felt something settle deeply inside her. Peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on someone's approval, the solid kind that grows from self-respect. The past had not broken her, it had refined her. And as she walked forward into her new life, one truth stood clear above all others. Shame destroys those who give it. Dignity protects those who keep it. Marriage did not change Evelyn's life overnight. It strengthened what already existed. She and Michael built their home the way careful people do, slowly, intentionally, with shared decisions and clear boundaries. They spoke openly about money, values, expectations. There were no hidden assumptions, no silent competitions, no power struggles. In the mornings, they planned their days together. In the evenings, they debriefed honestly. When disagreements surfaced, they addressed them without raised voices or public displays. Respect was not negotiable, it was foundational. People noticed. At work, Evelyn carried herself with even greater calm, not because marriage completed her, but because partnership supported her. Michael never interfered with her career. He admired it.
When opportunities came, he encouraged her to take them. "She earned it," he would say. "Let her grow." That support multiplied her confidence. Her firm expanded into new regions. Evelyn was selected to oversee operations beyond Lagos. She traveled, she led teams. Her reputation grew, not loudly, but firmly. People trusted her judgment because it was consistent. Across the same city, Adrian Cross faced another quiet ending. The logistics company he worked for shut down suddenly. No warning, no severance. He joined the long line of men searching for work with tired eyes and thin hope. He tried calling old contacts again. Numbers had changed, names no longer meant anything. The city had replaced him. He found temporary labor when he could. Some weeks he ate well, other weeks he didn't. Pride no longer visited him. It had abandoned him early. One afternoon, Adrian stood near a busy intersection, watching a wedding convoy pass. White ribbons, laughter spilling from open windows. He felt nothing at first, then a sharp realization. Somewhere, Evelyn was living the life he once thought he deserved, and he had no claim to it. He wondered briefly what might have happened if he had listened, if he had protected dignity instead of image, if he had questioned desire instead of feeding it. The questions had no answers now. Evelyn, on the other hand, rarely thought of Adrian at all. Her life had filled the space where his memory once lived. Love had not erased the past, it had rendered it irrelevant. One evening, she and Michael hosted a small gathering. Friends spoke of goals, challenges, growth. The room carried warmth, the kind built from trust. As guests prepared to leave, one woman pulled Evelyn aside. "You're lucky," she said. "Not everyone gets a second chance." Evelyn smiled gently. "I didn't get a second chance. I got a better one." The difference mattered.
Later that night, as Evelyn lay beside Michael, she reflected on how close she had come to losing herself, how public humiliation could have hardened her, made her suspicious, bitter. She had chosen differently. She had chosen dignity over desperation, patience over revenge, growth over noise, and that choice had shaped everything. Across town, Adrian lay awake in a room barely big enough to stretch his arms. The ceiling fan rattled overhead. Sleep did not come easily anymore, not because of ambition, but because of absence. Absence of respect, absence of trust, absence of relevance. The city outside did not care. That was the final contrast. Two people faced betrayal. Two people lost love. Two people stood at the edge of shame. One protected dignity and moved forward. The other protected pride and collapsed inward. And that difference, small at first, became permanent. Evelyn learned something profound after marriage. Peace does not end with romance. It expands. Her life with Michael was not built on dramatic gestures or public validation. It was built on routine, respect, and shared responsibility. The kind of life that looks quiet from the outside, but feels solid from within. Their home became a place people felt safe in, not because it was luxurious, but because it was warm. Weekends were for family. Evelyn reconnected deeply with her parents and siblings, relationships she had neglected during years of survival and emotional strain. Her mother, who had once cried silently after hearing how Evelyn was disgraced publicly, now watched her daughter move through life with confidence and grace. "You came out stronger," her mother said one afternoon, holding Evelyn's hands. "Not bitter, not broken." Evelyn smiled. "I chose myself." That choice echoed through everything. When Evelyn became pregnant, the news was received with quiet joy.
No social media spectacle, no pressure, just gratitude. Michael attended every appointment he could. He listened, he learned, he showed up. Their child was born into stability, a home without shouting, a home without fear, a home without shame. Evelyn held her baby one evening, rocking gently as the city lights flickered outside the window. She thought about how close she had come to losing herself years ago, how public humiliation could have destroyed her sense of worth if she had allowed it. Instead, it refined her. She taught her child lessons she had learned the hard way, not through warnings, but through example. That dignity matters, that loyalty should never be mocked, that love must never require self-erasure. As her career progressed, Evelyn began mentoring young women formally. She didn't tell her story in detail. She didn't need to. Her presence spoke enough. "Protect your name," she would say. "Everything else can be rebuilt." Her family grew, not just by blood, but by influence. People trusted her. Organizations sought her guidance. She became known not for drama, but for integrity. Michael remained steady beside her, never competing, never diminishing her light. Together, they built a partnership that did not need applause to feel complete. Years passed. Evelyn stood one evening at a small family gathering, watching her child play with cousins, laughter filling the room. Her parents sat nearby, content. Michael caught her eye and smiled. In that moment, she understood something clearly. Some endings are not loud. Some victories are not public, but they last. Across the city, somewhere Evelyn never visited anymore, Adrian Cross existed as a footnote in conversations about failed deals and wasted potential. His story did not end in transformation. It ended in warning. And that was enough. Because this story was never about revenge. It was about consequence. It was about how one decision, made in pride and displayed in public shame, can shape two lives in opposite directions. Evelyn did not win because Adrian lost. She won because she refused to lose herself. And that is the lesson. If you protect dignity when it costs you comfort, life will eventually reward you with peace. If you trade loyalty for ego, success will abandon you without apology. And if someone ever tells you through tears that you will regret the shame you are causing, listen, because forgiveness may come, but restoration is never guaranteed.